Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us again. Today we have Pamela Garfield-Jaeger with us, and I'm going to let her introduce herself as usual so that I don't forget anything because she's done so many things.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is fun. So, a little bit about me. Um, I'm known by some people as the truthful therapist on the internet. That's become my tagline, and it's because several years ago, when I came forward and started speaking about what was wrong in the mental health field, I was just saying very basic truths, but yet at the time, people were looking at me like I was this amazing thing. So that's how I became the truthful therapist. And one of the main things that, as you know, that we talk about all the time is, that girls can't be boys and boys can't be girls. I was also just talking more about the clinical side of it, working with teenagers and how they tend to follow each other and they tend to use new labels as a sense of power to avoid things of that sort. And I guess
Yeah.
that was revolutionary at the time.
Well, and
And
you've written two books.
yeah, so and since then I've done a lot. I've put together a lot of parent resources mostly. My mission really is to empower parents. A lot of them want to come to me for advice, and I'll try and give them advice, and sometimes maybe it's good. But my advice often is for you to believe in yourself, for parents to believe in themselves, and not always outsource their ideas and what they should do. So I really hope for parents to be empowered, but I will provide them information, facts, so that they can go ahead and make good choices and make informed choices for their families. So yeah, one of them is called A Practical Response to Gender Distress: Tips and Tools for Families. And that is in the title. It's a practical book that has not been written by anybody else about this gender issue, on what is going on with this trans agenda, what people, how people are being bamboozled by all of the different lies out there, and then how you can talk to a teenager who is in the grips of this, that really believes that they're maybe born in the wrong body, or just really wants to be part of this group. And so that I have all kinds of questions. I have a trans English dictionary. I have yeah, and I have things in there for people to screen for an appropriate therapist, how to work with a therapist so that they can be involved to understand what sort of their role is as a parent working, having a child uh, see a therapist. So there's just a lot of resources in there. And then at the end, actually, I list a bunch of websites and things. I'm pretty sure the Paradox Institute is in there, although I did write it 2 years ago. So you weren't official at that point, but I think you're still in there. I'll have to double check because I wrote it 2 years ago. It certainly would be in there now, but all
Yeah.
kinds of resources are in there, all the different agencies that are working on it from all different angles, and in different other people who have had a voice in this fight, so that people can just go down the rabbit hole and understand what is happening with their child, what's happening with their family. So that book. And then I have a children's book that is a lot more fun, and that is called Froggy Girl. I'm going to hold it up. Froggy Girl. And it's a cute uh, drawing done by a detransitioner. His name is Nicholas Blooms, and he's a talented artist. And it was my vision to make the little girl have red hair, but the rest is really his genius art in here. And this is a book about a little girl who wishes she was a frog, and everybody supports her in her froggy identity, but it doesn't work out so well because she can't do all the froggy things. So she feels really sad and alone, and she goes on a little walk, meets a wise turtle, and then the wise turtle helps her learn to appreciate that she's a beautiful little girl. And that's what the story is about, and it rhymes. So those
I
I
always
also
love
do
rhyming
trainings for
stories.
therapists and lots of other things. I've made several
Yeah,
media appearances. I've just kind of been an outspoken advocate for sanity. I think that's really what I do.
that's a tough job these days.
It is, especially in this day and age.
Would you say you've gotten any like pushback, any criticisms or hate from other therapists or activists?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I mean, when they find me, and I mean, I'm no longer in their circle, so it's a little easier. And that's also why I felt called to do this, is because I was taken out of my job for two reasons. One, I had chronic pain and it was hard for me to work a full-time job. I still do. That's why I'm able to do this and have this flexibility. And then also, I chose not to take the COVID vaccine after, or while I still had a disability and nerve pain. I didn't trust it. And because of that, they told me I could no longer work at the job I was at. And
Wow.
yeah, so that's what emboldened me to step up. So so I'm no longer in their circles, but when I enter their circles, I certainly do get pushback. I try to be sensitive. I'm not, face to face, I'm certainly very respectful. And I'm respectful all the time. Actually, I don't know what I'm saying here. But I I do get pushback when they see me. I've certainly had plenty of people tell me I deserve to lose my license, that they can't believe I'm a therapist just because I believe in reality, just because I believe children shouldn't be sterilized. It is pretty weird that that's the they believe that's what we have to do to be a good therapist, is to sterilize children. I don't fully get that, but they've been brainwashed, and
Yeah.
it is hard to reach a lot of them. So I also just believe in kind of just stepping aside and just doing my thing, and then they do their thing, and maybe someday they'll figure out that they're not really doing the right thing.
Yeah, it is really crazy how we've gone from like the 90s messaging of boys and girls can have any interest and it's great and fantastic to, well, now you know what? If they have an interest that's not typical of their gender, that breaks the gender binary by, now forcing them to be the opposite gender. It's strange. I
It's
don't
very
understand it
strange.
really.
And I'm a
But
little
like,
older than you. This is even from the
yeah,
70s I learned this.
yeah.
My book Froggy Girl was sort of inspired by something from the 70s called Free to Be You and Me. I don't know, have you heard of that?
Yes, I kind of get that vibe, especially at the end where she's doing like the dance and everything.
Mhm.
I kind of, yeah, yeah.
There's a little skit in there. I'll send it to you after. Maybe you can link it to this. There are these babies, and Mel Brooks is one of the voices, and they're both bald, and they're trying to figure out if they're boys or girls. And then they go through all the gender stereotypes, and they're joking around about it. And the boy thinks he's a girl, and the girl says, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, I want to be a ballerina." I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm making that up, but he's something very stereotypically female.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she wanted to be a fireman. So then he said, "Oh, that means you're a boy," but she was a girl. And then at the very end, the nurse comes. These are babies. They were just born in the nursery. They're puppets, by the way. And
Mm.
the nurse comes, and then their diaper gets changed. And they say, "See, I am a girl and I am a boy," because they still believed in biology and that
Yeah,
you could do anything. That the stereotypes are not necessary to make you a boy or a girl.
exactly. So, going to Froggy Girl, you have one page in particular that's a big old trans flag.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
Is this on
um,
video? Is your audience see
yes,
this on video? I'll hold it
yes,
up. Okay. Here it is. Yeah.
yes.
It's a froggy flag. What are you talking
It's
about?
yes, a trans froggy flag. Um, it's totally unapologetic. It's just right in your face. Um, but I also noticed that you didn't necessarily say anything bad about it or
Mm-mm.
good about it, just that it was a special flag that the teacher gave her. Um, did you do that purposefully for parents to kind of like talk to their kids about, if you see this flag, like, it's because,
I kind of
XYZ?
know. I guess it's a little subversive. I didn't intend for
Mm.
it to be. Actually, that was Nick who put the flag in, and I
Oh,
thought it was
wow.
just so great that well, he did a different drawing. I can't remember where she was, but somewhere in nature for that line, which it was the
Mhm.
teacher gave her a special flag, and the girl was so glad. That was the page.
Mhm.
And he put her somewhere else, and I said, "Oh no, that should be in the classroom, because it's a teacher." And then he drew the flag, and he did that drawing.
Mhm.
And I just thought it was so good that I wasn't going to argue with it. But in general, I feel like it's just subversive. It's pink and green. There's no
Mhm.
blue.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, like I guess my mind just like put in
Yeah,
the blue. But like that's
there's
how I
no,
remember it.
it's not, it's a froggy flag, but it
Yeah,
does look, it's very reminiscent. Yeah,
it
it
is.
certainly
Yeah.
does. But no, it's not, in a way, I kind of hope that they don't do that directly, especially with
Mm-hmm.
younger ones, little ones.
Mm-hmm.
It does not mention anything about trans. In fact, at the very end, there's descriptions of Nicholas and he originally put something about being detrans in there, and I had him take it out. I didn't want that in there. I
Mm,
didn't want children to ask questions of what that meant. He also had
right.
something about mental health, or having a good mental health, something positive, but still, I didn't want even the word mental health in there. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't want that stuff directly put towards children. So there is
Yeah.
that image. That is the one thing that I honestly wrestled with it. I wasn't sure, but it's funny.
Well, I think it's a good replacement. So now when they see it in a classroom, instead of thinking it means, trans or something, they might go, "Oh, it's the froggy
A
flag
froggy
from the."
flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that association kind of gets replaced, I think, and that'll be good.
I
I
mean, the story
it's
shows that she gets this flag and it makes her feel good momentarily, but in the end, she still feels very sad and lonely. So
yeah.
if the kid does encounter this flag, they might, if they learn this lesson through this book, they'll see, oh, that flag is nice in the moment, but it doesn't really feel good in the long run. So I
Right.
guess that's the message.
I think that's important too, to talk about the sadness and the loneliness, because there is a part in the book where her friends are affirming her as
Hmm.
a frog, and but they aren't there throughout. They're not there
Mm-mm.
trying to help her catch flies or anything else because they can't.
They're not with
Um,
her. In fact, even with the
right.
friends, you can see in the image, they're kind of far away from her. She's really far away from
Yeah.
them. She's trying
Mm-hmm.
to connect with them, but you can see there's already this distance. And so
Yeah.
that it just doesn't work. She's not able to connect with them. And
Mm-hmm.
she tries to go with the frogs, and she really can't connect with the frogs because,
Yeah.
she can't make the frog sounds and she can't swim. She's trying and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Which is a lot like, boys who try to be, or really more girls who try to be boys, or they're trying to be just one of the guys. And it's like, but you're really not. You're never going
Yeah.
to be one of the guys. I guess it goes both ways. You're
Yeah.
just never going to be one of the girls either. And I think
Yeah.
that's a fantasy that a lot of people who are trans have. But the truth is, everybody really knows. And sometimes they're pretending so they don't face that. But that's the
Yeah.
truth.
I mean, I was in that boat where I was trying desperately to be one of the guys and just do everything the boys did, and I was always left behind. I was always
Hmm.
excluded from the real boy activities and from how boys really were. And there were things that I just didn't get, and I fell into a lot of the same pitfalls that a lot of the trans identified females fall into, where then we try to overcompensate by being overly crass, overly mean, overdoing like the posturing and everything else, and trying to roughhouse and being a jerk, and it really ends up just you being a jerk. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't come across the same way as when
And
boys
fake.
do
You're
it. Yeah.
pretending. You're
Mhm.
putting it on. I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that a lot with trans people. I've seen them where they're putting on this persona and then it fades after a while. And then they catch themselves and then it comes back up again. Have you seen that cycle? I've seen that a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Well, I went through that cycle. It's the
Okay, yeah.
constant like, am I sitting the right way? Am I
Hmm.
slouching enough? Am I, leaning to the like it's just trying constantly to study everything they're doing to where it just becomes second nature. And you're just watching people and questioning yourself, like, am I normal? Am I doing the thing? And I'm not really sure if it's necessarily, because some people liken it to autism and masking. And I'm not really sure if it's necessarily the same thing or if it's just a case of a person realizing they're not fitting in with the group that they're trying to fit in with and just trying to adapt to the best of their
Yeah.
ability. So,
I think it's similar to like method acting. I don't know if
oh, yeah.
you've ever heard of, like, Dave Chappelle did a whole he did a whole bit on that with Jim Carrey. Did you hear that bit?
Mm-hmm.
Remember,
Yeah,
he
I
talked
did.
about how Jim Carrey was playing Andy Kaufman for the movie Man
Mm-hmm.
in the Moon, and that he wanted to meet he wanted to meet Jim Carrey, but Jim Carrey pretended to be Andy Kaufman,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Well, but you're still Jim Carrey."
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's a famous story of Jim Carrey going to the Playboy Mansion and causing all this ruckus and almost getting into a fight and getting thrown out because he was in character as Andy Kaufman.
Oh,
And
really?
it was just like this disastrous thing where he was just being a jerk because,
Yeah.
he thought so it was really crazy, this whole, because it wasn't just him being Andy Kaufman. It was him being Andy Kaufman as that
As a
other character
jerk.
that he played
Yeah.
with the mustache and whatever. And so it was like it was crazy. It was an interesting movie though, Man in the Moon, I have to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see how that would be similar, definitely, because then you get the men who think they're very bimbo-y and like that's what being a woman is. So
Mhm.
it also comes off as like really weird. I was just talking to some college students and telling them about how AGPs that I have known have said things like, "Really? You don't get turned on even a little bit? Like if you feel your breasts moving while you're walking?" And it's like, no.
No.
Like, it's kind of annoying, actually.
No, we don't.
So it's a pretty big, obvious sign that you're not fitting in.
I mean, that's one of the things I also point out about the harms of this, that a lot of people don't recognize, is how kids are not able to connect because they are
Mm-hmm.
pretending. And so I'm talking about obviously the ones that are doing the pretending, but then the ones who are in the room with the others who are pretending, they're also impacted because they're surrounded by other people who are acting different, that could change at any moment. Like there's no way
Right.
they can make real human connections if they're constantly pretending to be something else, and or if
Yeah.
they're acting out a fetish. It's just not that this is the real, to me, the tragedy of this. One of them, I guess there's so many tragedies
Yeah,
of how this is impacting young people.
definitely. So, speaking to that, what do you tell parents as the first step for trying to get their kids out? Because there is kind of an issue with that social aspect and their connections.
Well, it depends on their age, so that's the biggest factor. Also depends on how long they've been in it. They've been indoctrinated, or how invested they are in the trans identity. But usually the very first thing is to get them off their devices, to get them away from the electronics. Um, I just spoke to a set of parents. It turns out their son, who is an adult, so it's harder, but he's a gamer. And so to try to convince him to get off those games, he still lives with them. So to restrict that as much as they can and to monitor it as much as they can. These are not easy tasks, and I understand that. But those are things to work towards, at least, to recognize that those are big culprits in the situation. I have talked to families about moving, although we know that you really can't escape this. It's everywhere. So that's not always the best solution. So that really depends. Perhaps just moving schools if they're young, homeschooling them, trying to arrange so that they're not in the environment around the people that are influencing this. If they're at a sport, pulling them out of the sport, if that's who's affirming their identity. It just depends. um, just finding out who are the influences and get them away from that. A
Yeah.
very common thing, especially with kids who struggle socially, or kids who have autism. Oftentimes the parents are so excited because their kid finally met a nice group of friends, and then it turns out that nice group of friends are their trans friends that have convinced them to transition. So then
Yeah.
it's so devastating. They have a young person who really hasn't found a group of friends. They find this group of friends and then they have to pull them from that group. It's tragic, honestly, and difficult. But yeah, we talk about that. And then it again, it depends on the age, but a lot of it has to do with the dynamics between the parents and the children. There's usually some communication issues there. So really working on that, taking responsibility for issues in the family, such as maybe a divorce and how that impacted the child, or a sibling who had special needs, or a parent who had an illness that needed, that wasn't there for them for good reasons. This doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that there were things that impacted the family. So figuring out how that translates to a kid that might be looking for attention, might be having an unmet need, something like that. So it really depends. There's a lot of it depends. And that's actually, honestly, what my book is about. It's not a one size fits all. I think you talk to a lot of people in this space, or, and they have what's in mind, the type of trans person that they maybe encounter more of. So maybe more of the boys who are the AGB types that have really a lot of exposure to porn and anime, or you have the ones that kind of forget about that cohort and they think more about the young girls who have sexual trauma and thinking about that. um, you think about the little ones that that are indoctrinated by their own parents. I honestly don't talk about, or I don't talk to those parents because I can't reach them. But there's all these different cohorts, and there are all these different scenarios out there of how, learning what is happening with those individual families, those individual kids, is how you would then approach it. So it's really, in a way, how a therapist should work in general. Whereas I see trans as really like a symptom. So you see a symptom, and then you make an assessment, and you figure out, really like a detective, and you're just looking at clues because you really don't know. You're just trying to decide, and with a lot of information from the parents, and maybe if you do get to meet the child, often I don't, you can figure out what would be the best plan for them. So it's a lot of that, a lot of trial and error, honestly.
Yeah, I think looking at it as a symptom is probably more what we need to be doing as a society, because again, having lived it and having known so many trans identified people, whether they were formerly trans identified or current, it's never really about the trans thing. It's
Exactly.
always about something else.
It's always something
Um,
else.
yeah. A big one I'm seeing right now that tends to be a trend is the trans identified younger person posting messages from their parent who is trying to, or a family member trying to reach them and say, like, you're not really trans, like, your birth sex, I love you, please, like, just begging them. And the person being like, F you and this, that, and just being
Mm-hmm.
really crass and rude. I don't think that's the best approach to just kind of try, but I can see how a lot of relatives and parents are desperate.
Yeah,
So
when you go
what do
direct
you
like
recommend
that,
for them?
it doesn't usually work out so well.
Yeah.
um, I know a lot of people, especially more traditional conservatives, and I'm really kind of one of them now. But you just think, like, this is the truth. Like, what, they need truth. What are we doing? Like, you're a boy, you're a girl. There are only two sexes. Like, you just, all these really, honestly, very simple truths you want to just throw at them or just shake them and say, come on. But you have to recognize that they're really in a cult, and they are no longer thinking like that, and they've been conditioned to take those words and those messages and switch them and code switch them in their mind to say that means you're transphobic, that means you're a bigot, that means that you don't understand, that means that you're a fuddy-duddy. You're you just don't get it, right? So also, I think that's the type of information that I put in my book. I put a lot of the terminology, just simple words like cis that really are stupid words, but they're words that are important to your trans identified child to understand what it means and why it's there to manipulate you and all of us, and how, so that you can talk to that person and you're not just speaking over each other.
Yeah. I think that's really important. Just figuring out how to communicate
Hmm.
and not be seen as an adversary,
Hmm.
because they almost prime the pump with these people. They're like, they're going to say this to you. And when they do, that doesn't mean they actually love you. Because if they loved you, they would accept everything you did, no
Yep.
matter what it was. And
It's
It's
evil.
yeah, it is. It's really nasty. It's like drug dealers kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're like, "Oh, we care about you because we're giving you what you need," and your family doesn't understand. And
Yep.
it's I've seen that a lot with groomers
Yeah, I was gonna
and
say we
things
throw
like
that
that.
groomer word around a lot, but that's
Yeah.
exactly what this is.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you looked at the Trevor Project social media or their website? I mean, those
Yeah.
messages are plastered all over, and they're supposed to be a mental health suicide prevention agency, but what they really are a groomer agency,
Yeah.
teaching kids that if their parents just set limits, if their parents do things like set rules because they're their parents, that means that they don't love them.
Yeah. And they even have that little window that like,
Yeah,
here's
the
the
escape
panic
button.
button. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the chat
So
rooms. Parents
yes.
beware. There are chat rooms that are prime for predators that are in there. They're intentionally for what, age 12 to 24? That's what they
Something
say.
like that.
And none of it's
Yeah.
screened anyway, so who knows who's in there? And they have the most
Exactly.
disgusting names like Littles and I hate my parents and things like that. It's just it's intentionally there to turn kids against their parents.
Yeah. Um, we recently were posting clips from our talk that we did on the UNCG campus. And the only person who really had anything negative to say was a MAP ally.
Oh
And
no.
it was like, yeah, I wonder why you're upset. Did we strike a nerve a little bit there?
Anybody that uses that term map is already showing their colors.
Oh, yes.
They're
The minor
apologizing for
attracted
yeah.
person. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
these euphemisms are disgusting.
yeah. So, you talked about anime earlier,
Mm.
and I noticed that that's so prevalent in the trans community. And I was in anime club. I was a big anime nerd. So I saw a lot of these same personalities in those clubs. And it's weird because they get really culty about the anime. Like I never really got that. I was like, I just think it's funny. Like, so it was really crazy to me that they acted so protective of it, like it was their special thing. And if
Mm.
you didn't like it the same way, then you were ousted from the club.
Hmm.
And if you didn't squeal at the right moments in this episode, then you just didn't get it. You weren't into it as, like they were. And but my siblings ended up liking anime because it was on TV, it was on Cartoon Network. I didn't really influence them into it. They just kind of found it on their own. So I made sure to screen anime before they watched it when they were growing up, which I'm glad I did because some of the ones that they had on TV were
It's pretty graphic, some of it.
some of them, yeah. And then Netflix came out and started putting anime on.
Mm.
And so then they were like, oh, can I watch this one on Netflix? And I was like, no, 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 you can't watch that one. So why do you think, I haven't been able to really nail it down. Why do you think anime seems to have such a hold?
I wish, yeah, I was like afraid you're going to ask me this because I honestly, I still don't fully get it. This is my fuddy duddy side talking. I don't fully get it. The only real thing I really loved in anime, I really love that movie Spirited Away. But in general, I'm
Yeah.
not a big anime fan. So I'm not the best person to talk about it. I've seen a lot of the images are very sexualized, they're very infantilizing, but yet it's like these little girls with very young looks, but also very sexy features like large breasts and their large butts, and it's showing and midriff showing. So there's this like sexualizing of girls, and you see that style a lot, especially with these trans-identified people. They take on that anime look, the little pleated dress and the little crop tops and chunky shoes, that kind of look. I think that comes from anime. Am I right? It seems like
Yeah.
it. Um,
Um, it they've definitely adopted like certain aspects of it that actually some anime communities have kind of gotten really upset about how the direction of mainstream anime has gone. They don't like how young the characters are starting to look, that they're just
yeah.
looking younger and younger over time. And they're starting to point to things being problematic. And of course, they get the pushback from the people who like it. Um, there are people who are really into lollies, and those are the little girls that are, I look like a 5-year-old, but I'm really 500 years old. And so
Yeah.
it's totally fine for me. It's like, ooh, okay. Um,
Yeah, I think
but
there's a lot
yeah.
of that like mixed like mixing sexualization with children that happens. And also a lot of androgyny, kind of mixing with
Hmm.
gender stereotypes, mixing it, that I think influence kind of the non-binary, uh, you know, stuff. Um, I still don't fully understand. I mean, I think it also just has to do with the fantasy element of it all and having an avatar and taking on your identity. Um, Maybe you could
Yeah.
explain it to me better. And I really do need to sit down with someone
Yeah.
and have them help me understand it. I do know in general people who are autistic just tend to like anime, so there is that
Yeah.
correlation. So
I'm
I
wondering.
remember knowing a kid who was autistic years and years ago before trans was a thing. I'm talking like in the 90s. And he's the one that introduced me to anime. We went to Barnes and Noble. This is before the internet was even a thing. And I just spent
Wow.
all afternoon with him looking at all the anime comic books in Barnes and Noble. And it was nothing to do with trans, but that was just, he just liked it. And so I
Yeah.
think there is just that correlation too.
I've heard that it's because of the over expressiveness, that
Mm.
that's what draws people who are neurodivergent, is the over
Oh,
expressiveness, is because it's easier for them to like read expressions and project onto them. I haven't seen any studies or anything on it, but that was
that's
one theory that
interesting.
I
I did
heard.
not know that. I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's very over the top with expressiveness. But
Yeah.
the kids who are like really entrenched in that culture, and even some of the adults, they start acting that way and like talking
Mm-hmm.
that way. It's really something else. And that's one other thing that made me really uncomfortable when I was in anime club in high school, was like, oh my God, they're like talking this way. That's super embarrassing. Like it was weird.
Yeah. And then of course there's, people follow trends. That's part of it.
Yeah, that too. Um, is that something that you would say you see in like a lot of the cases?
I have certainly seen it, yeah. The anime is wrapped up in it. I've seen a lot of kids have an interest in anime that have a trans identity. You also just see it all over the internet.
Yeah.
A lot of times
Yeah.
I'll have some horrible troll and then you look at their profile and it's some anime thing. How many times has that happened?
Yeah. Or a furry.
A
That's the
furry,
other big one, which that's a whole other can of
yeah, I
worms.
know.
Yeah. There was an artist that I followed for a long time before any of the trans stuff. I just always liked her art. And she always would draw a male persona of herself as well, not just of her. She said it was kind of like an escapism sort of thing, but that she did not ever identify as male. That was never in the art. And then I checked in on her stuff years later, fairly recently, and she has moved completely to furry stuff. Her boyfriend is non binary and walks her around on a leash.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She has little kitty cat socks and things that she wears with paws on them. And now she's like, people are pushing the, oh, your male identity, that's you because you're trans. And she's kind of arguing with them but still trying to not come off as transphobic. And
Mhm.
it's, yeah, I worry about her because she's around my age. She's almost in her 40s, and I worry that she's going to start going down that route, which would be very sad.
Yeah.
So
We
it can
know
it can
it's
really catch anybody.
I like to think that it's innocent, but we know it's usually not, that there's
Yeah.
usually some fetish elements to this. But I think a lot of people have that entry from an innocent perspective,
Hmm.
and it's sort of like a really extreme version of pretend that people like to do. Uh, but it's like this weird thing where people don't know the difference between pretend and reality, which is really what inspired me to write Froggy Girl,
Yeah, I was
because
just gonna say.
this is Froggy Girl.
Yeah, definitely. but like, a child friendly version of like
I mean,
what we see.
I make these jokes sometimes, like these are the theater kids gone awry. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fun to role play. It's fun to pretend you're an animal or pretend you're something. But you have to know the difference between reality and pretend, and then that line gets blurred. I think they still know, but they don't want to, maybe. Um,
Hmm.
it depends on who we're talking about and their like intellectual levels, because some of these kids like have more disabilities. It doesn't sound like the artist you're talking about is disabled in any way, but we're targeting also people with like cognitive disabilities and such, and they don't really understand the social cues and when it's appropriate to pretend and when it's not. And if they're egged on and there are no limits and there are no lessons about how to be in society, then this is the result, this chaos.
Yeah. I would say this artist definitely seems like she has some elements of depression
Mm,
and maybe some elements of very low self-esteem, which I mean, if you look at her, like look at photos of her, she's gorgeous, but she
yeah.
just really is often very down on herself. I suspect there might be an eating disorder, but it doesn't seem like she's really grounded in reality. And I think that's why she just kind of let it take her. Um,
Yeah, and
but
it used to
this,
be that like the environment would bring people back to reality, but now we have these environments that are pulling people out of reality.
yeah. What can parents do once their kid is to that level where they come to you and they're like, my name is Kai now, and I identify as he, him, non binary, and also I'm a tiger, and you have to affirm me or
Mm,
you don't love me. And they're
yeah.
like 16 and they've been kind of aloof and there's not really a connection there. Like, how can a parent start building that connection?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things I advise them to do is to plan some kind of family trip, something to force some kind of connection there. I usually say don't make gender be the main topic of conversation, especially if they're that immersed. It doesn't go well, like we just said earlier in this conversation. I would, it's going to usually don't expect something to shift quickly. So um, it'd be more focusing on connecting with your kid, um, maybe thanking them for sharing it with you, but you're not going to affirm it, right? That you're glad that they told you, and so that you can connect, but don't say you are that identity. But yeah, of course, taking away the electronics and figuring out how you guys can connect, and being honest in your family about where is this coming from. Think, like, really take the time to think about where this is coming from, and then really tackle those issues. So if that kid has some kind of trauma, like addressing that. If it's really like an issue in the family, like a contentious divorce, like addressing that and how that impacted this kid. If the kid, I mean, a lot of times they are left to their own devices, like literally a device, but just left alone. And because sometimes it's out of your control, like think about how things can change, because that kid now has had this other group take over your job as parent, right? So you need to take that back. I
Yeah.
don't advise them to run straight to a therapist. I mean, sometimes they come to me to ask me for advice, but not to just do therapy unless you know specifically what the therapy is going to address. If it's just to change their minds about being trans, it's not going to probably work out so well. And also, that gives the message oftentimes to the child that you are now outsourcing your parenting to somebody else. And that makes them maybe dig their heels in even harder. So, for you to kind of take charge of your household, of your kid, the trend I notice is a lot of households where they're kind parents, they're loving parents, but they kind of just go along with everything that's told, and they follow all the rules. They do what all their doctors say without asking questions. Oftentimes, it's been a therapist that created the damage in the first place. And sometimes I'm just like, how about you retreat from all these other people and think for yourself for what you think is right and take some time and think deeply and honestly about what's happening with your child, with your family, with you, with everybody within the family, and then come up with a plan.
That's really good advice, especially since I think a lot of parents, their instinct is to just kind of freak
Like,
out.
help, 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 I'm lost.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, yeah, and it's, I mean, I don't envy anybody. And I don't pretend I have all the answers. I don't pretend that I know what it's like. I've seen enough people and heard from enough people that have been able to pull their kids out of it. And I know it almost never happens quickly. And
Mhm.
usually it comes with a lot of heartache in the process. But it's possible. And it usually makes them better for it in the end for and everyone involved, because then people are just more honest. Um, in therapy, there's a theory called family systems theory. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's pretty basic, or it's pretty self-explanatory, where you look at the family as a system. And in the old days, you would look at somebody who had something like a drug addiction or some acting out behavior, and you would see that person is not, it's not them having the problem, but they're what they call the identified patient. I don't know if you've heard that term.
No.
And so they're the identified patient, and they're really a manifestation of the dynamics in the family and the system. And it doesn't mean this is always true. This is just one way of looking at it. You know, when we're
Yeah.
looking at theories, there's always different ways of looking at it. But um, to think about it, this person is manifesting maybe some of the struggles within that family, some of the dynamics that could use extra help and support. So that's what I encourage parents to look at. I mean, it could just be as simple as something really bad happened, and then they took this identity on, and it's not about the parent or the family. You know, there's so many different scenarios out there that could be. So again, like I said earlier, it just depends. But oftentimes I notice that it is a lot to do with the family dynamics, and I realize, oh, I see what's going on here. This parent has this. They were so, they were so wrapped up in this job or this career that, the kids were kind of left to do, with their nanny, and they weren't really there. And this was the result of that, or this is one result of that. I mean, it
Yeah.
could go several ways. It doesn't even mean that you did anything particularly wrong. It's just, and it's also just the way our culture is right now, because these activists and this agenda is there to swoop in to any family and child that that has any type of vulnerability. So think about what the vulnerability is and build upon that, so they're not
Yeah.
vulnerable anymore.
Yeah. I mean, these activists are definitely out there thinking about where all the vulnerabilities are and where to
Hmm.
come in to somebody's family.
Yeah, I mean,
Is
the
there,
well, the kids that are like doing great usually don't have this happen to them. We know that.
yeah. Um, Now that we know this exists in culture, and now that we know that there are these groups out there, are there any preventative measures that you can think of to tell parents before it comes into their house?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have said this several years ago because I would like to just not have kids be exposed to any of this, but that's not the world we live in. So that's why I wrote Froggy Girl. And then I would encourage them to tell kids to stand up to the pressure. Also, just help them learn there are only boys and there are only girls. And depending on what your cultural beliefs are, people have different beliefs on how gender expression is appropriate. So I'm not really sure what is the right answer there, because people would rather their kids be more traditional, or at least be led in that direction. And then we'll see what happens. If they're really gender nonconforming, we want to talk about like how that can be, and we certainly don't want them to think that means that they're trapped in the wrong body, or that they should change their perceived sex so that they can conform in this traditional way. That's definitely not healthy. So it's really about helping kids accept themselves, helping them stand up to the pressures of language, and don't You don't have to pretend anybody is anything. You can say no. You don't have to name your pronouns, and to teach them early on what is truth and to stand up for truth. You know, that there are only boys, there are only girls. You can even do it in other ways. Like if you see something and someone else says it's something else and you know it's true, like you stand up for that. You know, the sky is blue, the sky is blue.
Right.
You don't have to
Yeah.
pretend. Because I think that's a lot of it too, is we're setting up kids to be prey. If we tell them that to deny their own eyes and ears, then they don't trust themselves and it's easier for them to become victims of any kind of
Right.
abuse.
Yeah. Because, I could totally see how something might start making a kid uncomfortable. Like, oh, I like this My Little Pony drawing, and
Hmm.
I'm going to join this Discord group that, I found through Roblox or whatever, because a lot of predators get in there and start luring the kids in. They'll show them the safe stuff first,
Right.
and then slowly, slowly, the other stuff starts creeping in and it becomes more and more suggestive. And they don't know not to say, they don't want to be rude, and they don't want to, this is something that this person has been really nice to them, and they don't know how to say no when things are getting uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage them too to like come to you when there's something uncomfortable, even if they're not sure. uh, Give them a little talk about the internet. We used to, like when I was young, we talk about who, stranger danger. I don't think that's as much of a problem now. Now it's about who's on the internet, who they think is nice, and
Yeah.
sliding into their DMs and
Yeah.
meeting people and keeping secrets. Like these are the kinds of conversations you need to have with kids to help them understand that, like, kids know they have a little feeling that something's off, but they ignore it. So I think what
Hmm.
the lesson is to not ignore those little feelings that something's off
Yeah.
or something feels wrong. And of course, if you're not there and you're busy for one reason or another, oftentimes not your fault, but sometimes that happens, then the predators have a better chance of getting a hold of your child.
Right. And even adults can ignore that little feeling. I
Oh,
have, and
yes.
it's bitten me in the rear.
Yeah, I think a
I've
lot of
ignored
people
it.
can relate to that.
Yeah.
And we're innocent, we get taken advantage of.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're looking
Um,
for love or we're looking for acceptance and we're
yeah.
lonely and we hear something we
Predators know what
want.
to look for.
Hmm.
So, is there what do you think about these drag queen story hours?
Yeah. Well, obviously I don't like them. But I think I think a lot of people don't realize just how like evil they actually are. The
Hmm.
agenda, it's not just that they're icky or perverted. I mean, they're meant to destabilize children. They're
Yeah.
meant to expose them to sexual content.
Hmm.
They're meant to tell kids to deny their eyes and ears and to intimidate kids, to make them uncomfortable, but to say they need to be quiet about it. So I feel like they're bad and for many reasons. And you've
Yeah.
seen this online, the meme. It's like, well, why don't they go read to the elderly? Why don't they go read to other adults? Why they always have to
Yeah.
be around children? What is that about?
Especially since, if the whole thing is about normalization and destigmatization, then wouldn't we want to destigmatize them with people who can vote,
Yeah.
like, and set policy, not like 5-year-olds?
And we know why. We know because they
Yeah.
wanted to get the children young. They want to indoctrinate the children. They want to destabilize these kids. They want the kids to be exposed to it so that they don't know anything different. And
Yeah.
because kids know. I just heard Prisha say this actually at a speech recently. She said the reason they go after kids so young, I don't know if you know this about her. She said this publicly. She has a stepdaughter, and what actually woke
Hmm.
her up from being trans was the stepdaughter, who I think was 5 at the time, a young girl, still called her mommy, even though she had a beard and looked male with the testosterone. The little girl knew that she was a woman and called her mommy. And she said, little kids know. And she said, that's why they want to get to the kids, because if the kids get brainwashed
Yeah.
deny reality, then they really got society.
Yeah. I really like Prisha. She's
Hmm.
she's on point. She
I
knows
know.
her stuff.
She
Like,
certainly does.
she's come such a long way, and I'm so proud of her.
Same.
Like, she has really stuck it out through a lot of nasty stuff.
Certainly.
So, I mean, a lot of us who've been in this for more than, you know, 3, 4 years at this point, we're like, it feels like it's been a decade
It,
already.
it's crazy.
So, well, but maybe we need to have some story hours. Maybe Pam needs to have Pam story hours and
Yeah,
go
Froggy
read Froggy
Girl.
Girl. That would be
Actually,
great.
this one, they had a Brave Books reading a couple of months ago, and I wasn't able to participate, but a friend of mine did in her where she lives in Texas, and she actually dressed up as a frog and read Froggy Girl at her
That's
local
so cool.
library. Yeah, her name is
Hey,
Rebecca Smith, and she
oh, I
posted
remember
it.
you talking to me about her. Yeah,
Yeah, so that was
that would be
cool.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, that's something. Let's hear in the comments if people want to hear Froggy Girl at some readings and have some Pam story hours instead of drag queen story hours.
Yeah, we need wholesome reading.
Definitely. Definitely. I would love to see that. Absolutely. So maybe that's something we need to organize.
Hmm.
But yeah, it has been great to have you. Um, I've enjoyed speaking with you this whole time. I think
Same.
you're so insightful, and um, I mean, I just like you.
I like you too.
So
We're friends offline. For those that don't know,
yes,
Cynthia and I actually are friends, even not just on this Zoom call.
yes, and she read Froggy Girl to my daughter, and it was lovely.
Yes,
It was
before it
before
was
it came out.
published. Your
See, you
daughter,
already had the story hour.
I think your daughter was my first young child to hear the rhymes of Froggy Girl, and she did love it.
Yeah.
That really helped encourage me.
Yeah, she wasn't even 2 yet. She was a year and a half, and she loved Froggy Girl. So,
Yeah.
and
We
she
were in
liked
a
the
group with her
pictures.
and some detransitioners, and they
Hmm.
all liked Froggy Girl. That was a cool moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to have a preview of Pam's Story Hour. So, and I
Yeah.
can highly recommend it.
And Cynthia
So,
does a lot of good work too.
oh, thank you. I try. It is tiring, the toddler, and now being pregnant.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we will be reading Froggy Girl to the next baby as well. So we will
Yay.
have, generations of fans.
Yay.
So where can people pick up your books?
So, Froggy Girl is easy to remember because I was advanced enough to make it a website, which is froggygirlbook.com. And it's on all the major platforms. And then I have my other book, the parent book, is on Amazon only. Actually, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but I usually more sell it on Amazon. And you can just put in the name, A Practical Response to Gender Distress, Tips and Tools for Families. It's so easy to remember. I'm joking. I should have made it a different name.
Well, the gender distress should make it easier to
Yeah,
find.
it's a
It's not
practical
like,
though. Practical is what you got to
yeah.
put in. Anyway, or just probably put my name in. You could probably find it that way.
Oh,
It's on
yeah.
Amazon. If you go to my socials, you can find it. It's pinned on the link tree. So I have the truthful therapist on Instagram, at truth therapist on X, or formerly Twitter. I'm on YouTube, just has a few videos. It's not always active, but it's also at The Truthful Therapist. I have a pretty active Substack. I post about once a week, which is Pam, The Truthful Therapist. So you can find lots of resources. I also write for the Human Events column. So you can, if you search on Human Events, you can see lots of articles, and a lot of them are about this subject. Not all, but a lot of them tend to be about that. I'm like their person that writes on the trans subject.
Yeah, and you've exposed a bunch of therapy conferences and
Oh
things like that
yeah.
too, which is exciting.
I had a tweet and an article that I actually wrote for the Post Millennial Human Events. Actually are the same company. They're just arms of each other. And of these women who believe that if you voted for Trump, that means you're in an official cult. And they had these really nasty moments in this training. I filmed it all, posted the clips of it on Twitter. It went super viral. And it made it onto the
Yeah.
Twitchy page, which is a big deal. That's like status on Twitter. I was pretty excited about that. Um, and exposed them because they were so nasty. They were so racist. And they were just, it was all full of lies, is what it was. And it just exposed how just horrible so many therapists are out there. It's what I want people to recognize, that just because someone says they're a therapist, it doesn't make them good and nice. In fact, sometimes it makes them worse.
I had to fire my therapist because in the middle of talking about how my mom was a really big TRA, loved I Am Jazz, and was pushing me to believe that I was actually a boy, she stopped me and was like, yeah, but actually Jazz's feelings came from her and yours
Oh
were
no.
imposed on you from your
Yeah.
mom. And so then I had to stop her and tell her, like, well, you don't know Jeanette Jennings very well, do you? So
Mm-mm.
we had that whole conversation. And then I sent her a very long email asking her what other beliefs a 3-year-old has that she believes should be affirmed.
Right.
Um, at which point she gave me 4 days to come back and reconsider uh, and have a talk with her in her office,
I
to which I
wouldn't.
said no.
I wouldn't have.
So,
I'm so
yeah,
over
that
these
was,
therapists that think they know better. They think they have
yeah,
the moral high ground. They do not. And they've been indoctrinated. But it's more than just being indoctrinated. They have been indoctrinated with the belief that they are morally superior. And that is
yes.
dangerous.
Yeah, I should have known. I should have known when I first came in because she asked me um, why I didn't want to put a gender down on the form, because it
Hmm.
was like an intake form, and I think I wrote something in there that said I don't believe in gender. She was asking me about that, and so I thought maybe she was just kind of a normie and she didn't
Right? They
know.
just have it there and they're not thinking about it.
Right.
You try not to be so reactive to everything and not realize it. Not,
Yeah.
not everyone realizes what it all means, what the connotations of that really are.
Yeah. And so
But
I talked to her about it and I was like, okay, I think she's just a normie. She just doesn't know. This
yeah,
isn't like her wheelhouse. And then she knew about the work that I do. And I was like, okay, she seems a little positive maybe about some of the work. But then that came up and I was like, okay, I think we're done here. I gotta go.
I'm glad you left her. I really believe that no therapy is better than bad therapy.
Yeah, I agree.
There's
It's
other
like
ways to
really,
get help or other ways to get better, I'll say.
mm-hmm.
We don't always need therapy for it. In fact, sometimes I think we're better off without it.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you. I think, just healthy living,
Hmm.
I think can be really helpful. So,
For sure.
and there you go, being truthful again.
Yes.
All right. Well, it has been great to have you. We have officially come up on the hour.
All right.
So, yeah, we did it.
Yay.
Thanks for joining us, guys, and we hope to see you next time.